Bonjour, and welcome to Chapter 7 of MAISON en France. My name is Jean Sandbloom, and we're out here in the countryside in southwest France. I've got my 200-year-old farmhouse that I've been working on for the last 7 years, and it's pretty amazing that just 2 weeks ago I was swimming in that swimming pool down there. Fall has arrived at 9 million miles an hour. The leaves are all over the ground already. My 15 hours of sunlight that I had here in the middle of summer, we're down to about 9.5 hours a day at this point. It's down in the 40s at night, and it won't be long before we're down in freezing. And il y a beaucoup de pluie. There is lots and lots of rain. So today we are going to get things ready, and for the first time this season, I'm going to light the wood stove. It's amazing how little heating your house has changed in 2 centuries here in the countryside in France, but I've been hearing lots of chainsaws and lots of axe whacking here for the last few weeks as people get ready to get their firewood stacked up and ready to keep their wood stoves going. So today is Halloween. They don't really celebrate Halloween here in France. I've been kind of searching around for the last 7 years here looking for it. And honestly, the impression I get is they just feel it's too commercial and they just don't want to be a part of it. Now, I will say tomorrow, November 1st, is All Saints' Day. It's very similar to Day of the Dead in Mexico, in which the people here pay tribute to their lost loved ones. You'll go to the cemeteries and you'll see tons of chrysanthemums on the graves. Sometimes they have church services and everybody gets the day off. But for Halloween, if you want it, you got to go to Disneyland Paris, or you really got to search for it because it just doesn't exist. So the cities, you can find some kids, they'll have some parties. Some neighbors might get together and cook up a tiny trick-or-treating situation. Usually there's probably an American involved somewhere in all of that. Their costumes, when they do it, there's none of the silly, cute, and sarcastic ones. The costumes here are always scary. And what's really cool is if you go and search out the genuinely scary places that they have here in France. Earlier this year, for the very first time, I went to the catacombs in Paris, and that is really amazing. You actually underground walk a mile and there's just bones stacked absolutely everywhere. And the story on how the whole thing came about is really pretty amazing. So out here in the Lot region, I have found an annual tradition of something to do on Halloween. And what I hope for is it's been raining all morning, but if the rain stops, we're going to go to Saint-Cirq-Lapopie. And this town is awesome. You really can't go in the summertime. You can't go on a weekend because it's just packed with tourists. But Halloween, middle of the week, if that's when it falls, you walk through this town and it's empty and it's gloomy with the clouds and the rain, and it's just the absolute perfect place to spend Halloween. So as soon as the wind breaks, the rain here, we're going to head up to the motorcycle and we're going to go to Saint-Cirq-Lapopie. Saint-Cirq-Lapopie is a hilltop town overlooking the Lot River, the namesake of the Lot department, and it eventually flows into the Garonne River near Bordeaux. Every summer, the Lot is full of boats using the system of locks, all of which need to be hand-cranked open and closed. Navigating each lock takes about 45 minutes. By November, people have put their boats in storage and the lock system shuts down, as does the river pretty much. You follow the river upstream for about half an hour from Cahors, past 8 of the 45 locks on the river, to get to Saint-Cirq-Lapopie. Being in Saint-Cirq-Lapopie on Halloween really makes perfect sense why they don't have to celebrate Halloween here, because they've lived Halloween here for 2,000 years. This area has been through a lot of dark times. And when you look back at the Gothic stories of the late 1800s, you even look at Grimm's fairy tales. I think that was 1812 when that came out. 210 stories by the Grimm's brothers. And that kind of explains why kids here, like when you go to Disneyland Paris and you ride the Snow White ride, or you go into the Haunted Mansion, and it's very dark, much darker than you'll find at any of the other parks in the world, because that's what they're used to. They grew up on that. And I was listening to a podcast from Rick Steves just this morning for Halloween, and it makes a lot of sense. They had these things called umpiers. I know I'm pronouncing that incorrectly in Eastern Europe, but back in the day, when people didn't die correctly and the village went into bad times, they blamed it on the fact that uh, the people that passed away just weren't taken care of properly, and they were wreaking havoc on the villages. So they would go and search out the people that had died, dig them up, and if they found somebody that looked a little suspicious, they would take a wooden stake and drive it through their heart. And that's where the whole vampire story started. And then when you get to Dracula, you look at the fact that he was just a really horrible guy. He was just impaled his victims. He just was just awful. And they thought the number one suspect, when someone dies and the village goes into a really serious period of bad times, they always looked at the person that led the life that was the most notorious. And that's where the whole Dracula stories came from. So in Halloween here in France, they really didn't need to make stuff up. They lived it, and they're living it all the time. And to go through a place like Saint-Cirq-Lapopie is just so fascinating, because it's like a story, but it's not a story because it's real. I'm back from Saint-Cirq-Lapopie, and I only got rained on once. Not too bad. You know, one tip if you do go, even though it's a Tuesday at the end of October on a gloomy day, my two favorite restaurants, one, Le Cantu, was closed on a Tuesday, and the other one, Le Gourmet Quercenoise, was totally booked out. So just make sure you go to Google Maps. Those are my two favorite restaurants, Cantu and Le Gourmet Quercenoise, and book ahead. I got there. I ended up in a restaurant. It was fine. It was just packed. Everybody was trying to get in from the rain. So since I've got a little break in the sunlight, I think I'm going to make a mad dash and see if I can put away all my patio furniture before it starts raining again. The thatched roof on the patio really should be rolled up and stowed with your patio furniture. The alternative, I have found, is to leave it up and let the wind and rain tear it to shreds, which in the long run creates even more work, and you have to go out and buy a new roof every year. Nice. Everything's all put away. I put the roof inside two huge garbage bags taped together. That'll actually keep it just perfect. It'll be just like new when I roll it out next year. And other than that, I put the cushions up in the loft. So this is it. It's kind of a sad moment every year when the patio goes away. So it's time to get ready for the wood stove. Step one, wood. You don't even want to think about starting this process with a dull blade. If you don't have 100 oak trees on your property, or the idea of using a chainsaw and an axe aren't very appealing, you can have chopped firewood delivered. A steer is 1 cubic meter of wood and is currently about 70 euros. You'll need at least 10 of those to get through the winter. They will typically dump it on your driveway and you'll have to lug it and stack it. If you do cut your own firewood, note that you have to cut the tree down at least a year before you can use it. New wood is green, it won't catch very easily, and even if you do get it lit, it'll smoke up the whole house. So this new wood is wet, so I gotta rotate the dry wood. So I wanna light the fire tonight. This has been sitting here since last winter, so I know lots of friends hiding in here. Always a pleasure. That'll do it. Big one at the bottom. Always a little nervous getting the wood stove going for the very first time for the season. It's all about momentum, and you can't allow a lapse to happen, because then the fire is going to start floundering and you're just going to have a fire that just won't light. So what you have to do is be really organized. Right here, I've got a bin full of kindling, which is little small pieces of wood. Then the next step up is you got a basket here full of small branches. Then over here, you've got some bigger branches. And then you've got really small cut up pieces of tree trunk. And then over here, you got the big cut up pieces. So that way, when something starts going wrong, you immediately know where to go to grab something to get the fire going again. So totally overkill, but I went ahead and just lined everything up in a row here so that nothing is missing for me to light the stove today. I got the kindling right here. I got my starter. I got my lighter fluid, log fluid. I don't know really what they call that. Newspaper, little bricks that you put in to help get the kindling started, and then our small, medium, and large logs over here. So the first thing you got to do is make sure that it's completely cleaned out inside, which I did before I left at the end of the winter. And then you got to, down here, you want to open this up. And make sure that the ash tray is empty enough. All right. So in goes first a couple sheets of newspaper. Gonna put some kindling in. That should do it. A little bit of the lighter fluid. This is not the same you put on a barbecue. This is a special one for logs. All right. And then we're going to light the newspaper, which I usually light through here. All right. We have flame. Nice. Okay. So I'm going to take some of these smaller little pieces of tree branch and kind of stack them up in here. Add a little bit of this to the tree branch. Oh no, I don't even think I need to. All right, so far so good. Okay, we're going to move up to the next size branch. these two. So what you want to do is just a mix of air in here. So I'm going to close this, but I'm going to still leave this open about 1 inch. If I were to close this, you would hear the flame go down almost immediately. It's just that little bit of air in there is what's keeping this whole thing going. So it's really going well right now. So it's time to add the first big log. Now, I'm not going to put the hugest one in there at this point, just the smallest of the big logs. I'm going to close this back up. And I'm just going to listen because you can hear it. It sounds like a storm. And as long as you can hear it, you know it's going. And it's almost too hot at this point. I'm going to give it about a minute to let that one log catch. And then I'm going to probably close this front damper here. So this is really the toughest part right now. Because I closed the front damper and I closed the top lid here, the storm noise went way down. And this is the part where if you don't pay attention and you walk away because it may be not getting enough air, it could totally go out. So it's just a matter of staying focused and just keep an eye on it at this point. I lifted the lid. It's going on fine inside. It's nowhere near as fierce as it was a little while ago, but there's still a really good flame going on in there. So again, just a matter of keeping an eye on it. So the fire got a lot quieter, but it's still nice and hot inside, and it's time to put in a truly large log down. Ooh, I'm totally going to have to change into shorts and a t-shirt. It is hot in here, and I've only put one large log on the fire. As soon as you get the second big log on the fire, then you can relax. And honestly, at this point, I'm controlling the fire entirely just by opening this damper 1/2 inch and then closing it 1/4 of an inch and then reopening and closing. And it literally is the control for the entire wood stove. So while this is heating, I thought I'd take a minute and show you some alternatives if you don't want to go through all this to keep your house warm. So let's start off with all the mistakes I've made in buying the wrong radiators. So we're going to start at the bottom. This is a portable electric radiator. It works perfectly fine. You can move it around the room. If I get up early in the morning and it's a little cold and I don't want to start the wood stove right away, I'll turn this on for a few minutes. The only thing about this, despite the fact it works great, is it is expensive. This is the most expensive way you can heat your house. Uh, Gas right now is $8 a gallon. So when gas goes up, electricity goes up, everything right now is super expensive. So this is good for 20 minutes at a time. You certainly don't want to leave this on for a few hours. Next step up, this is a built-in electric radiator. It's got a thermostat on it, so you can keep it at a low temperature, and then that way you don't have to turn it on and off and on and off. But generally speaking, it also eats up a ton of electricity, so not a good value. Next step up is this portable oil-filled radiator. So there's oil inside, you heat up the oil, and then that keeps the radiator going. You don't have to refill the oil, it's permanent on the inside of the radiator. So again, because it's portable, because it's still powered by electricity, it's not the most efficient, but it's not as bad as the other two. And then here in the bedroom is if you're going to have a radiator, this is the one you want. It is electric, but oil also is inside of it, and this is actually mounted to the wall. So this is permanent here. As far as radiators that you're going to have in your house, this is probably the best value that you can get. So if all of this just seems like a little bit too much work, you can have central heating installed in your old houses. There are really 3 steps of it. The first step was a butane boiler system. This is what they used here really typically about 30 years ago. The butane truck, which you can still see occasionally going up and down the street, would go to the outside of your house, connect, and then they would send the butane to a boiler inside your house, and then that would send the heat to the radiators inside the house. Worked perfectly fine when gas costs about, $3, $4 a gallon. Right now, gas is $8 a gallon, and it's cringeworthy when people are getting the bills to have the butane pumped into their houses. The second system is called a pompe chaleur, or a monoblock heating system. These you will find all over the neighborhood. You'll spot them because there'll be a metal box in the yard with a fan on it. And this works with the environment to help heat the house. And so it uses the fan sends the warm air into the house. They always put these boxes on the south side of the house where the sun goes by to make a maximum usage of the sun's heating power. It all works great. It's a lot more fuel efficient than the butane boiler system, but it doesn't work well when it gets really cold. So when it drops below freezing and you need it to heat the most, that's when it's not going to work at full efficiency, and you'll probably have to drag one of these portable radiators around your house. And third is solar. When I first got here, I wanted solar installed. Unfortunately, it was just too new, like the early days in Los Angeles. Nobody really trusted the solar companies. And so it was impossible 7 years ago to get it done. I've since walked around the neighborhood and I've seen 2 houses that have solar panels. They're out in the yard. The township here, the village, doesn't really want solar panels on your roof in an old house, especially 1 century old. It just looks funky. So the people that do put it in their yards. It's still a brand new source of energy, and it's kind of the Wild West. Germany, Italy, and Spain are all ahead of France as far as solar installations go, but I can't imagine a better thing to invest in. If you're going to put $30,000 down for a central heating system, I think solar is totally the way to go. Well, that's it. It's time to put in the second big log. And don't have to worry about it anymore. Once you get 2 big logs in there, you're done. So that is how to light a wood stove. I'm going to go down, put on shorts, t-shirt, and some suntan lotion because I am boiling. It is so hot in here. It's raining again. I just rode the moto into the local village, got a loaf of bread at the bakery, and on the way you could just smell everybody's got their wood stoves going right now. It's such an incredible smell. Thanks so much for watching. I do a new video every single week about my American life here in the French countryside. If you don't want to miss one, please hit subscribe. Next week, I've got to give you 4 tips on ways that can really help improve your French if you want to come and live here. And I'm also going to take you into discovering live music. You're going to have a little barn concert. We've got the festivals in the villages, and then we've got the massive festivals in Paris. So please watch next week.